Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for our Learn Live session on how to build the UI in Canvas apps and Power Apps. My name is April Dunham and I'm a cloud advocate focused on the Power Platform here at Microsoft. And with me today, I have my colleague, Homolemo. How are you doing, Homolemo?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Hope you're well. I hope the audience is doing well and that you're all enjoying Ignite so far. I think I speak for us both when I say that we are really happy to have you join us for this Learn Live session. My name is Homelemo and I'm a cloud advocate here at Microsoft, focusing on Power Apps.
Great, yes, and we're so happy to have you with us here live. Make sure you follow along in the Learn module that we have there at the link at aka.ms/ignite21 fall-CONLL111. All that's on the screen. Or if you don't want to type all that, that's a big long URL, just use a QR code that we have here on the screen as well to get to that. So, we're going to be walking through one of these Learn modules here. Homolemo, why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about what exactly Learn is?
Yeah, sure. So if you haven't heard about Microsoft Learn, it is a free online training platform that provides interactive learning for Microsoft products and more. The main goal is to help you become skilled on any one of our products and technologies like the Power Platform. And to learn skills with a fun, guided, hands-on, interactive content that's specific to your role. Today, we will be focusing on a Learn module, which is really what Learn is made up of. Think of a module as a course that contains a collection of units which cover a specific topic. The module that we will be focusing on now is how to build the UI in a Canvas app and Power Apps. So with that, I think this is a good time to talk about what some of our learning objectives are.
Absolutely. So there are three main things that we want to go over today. The first one is just really understanding the basics of building the UI through some main things here. We want to use themes. So we have some out-of-the-box themes that we can use to really transform the look and feel of our Power Apps Canvas apps. We're going to talk about icons and how we can add those to have some interactive buttons and things like that. And we're going to talk about how we can customize some of the out-of-the-box controls and how we can add in our own custom images. Then we want to move on and discuss some personalization in our Canvas apps. How can we possibly maybe get in some information about the user that's using the app and personalize a little bit? And finally, we're going to talk about understanding the differences between tablet and mobile form factors. All right, so with that, reminder that we are live and interactive. So make sure that you're saying hi in the chat. So I don't know, we've had a great kickoff here at Ignite. Homolomo, any thoughts on like what's your favorite maybe Power Platform related things have been so far at Ignite?
Yeah, I am specifically love two things. One is the new licensing model, the pay as you go Power Apps plan. I think that's a groundbreaking announcement that was made, and also I really like the fact that we can now create and brand our very own Power Apps as native apps within various stores for our mobile. So that is pretty cool.
That was really cool. I loved, both of those things, of course. And then Julie Strauss, I think, showed kind of a preview of the new commenting in Power
Right.
Apps Canvas apps too. That was pretty cool. I'd love to hear everyone
Yeah.
else like so far. Use the chat. First of all, say hi and then let us know what your favorite Ignite announcement has been so far and your favorite session that you've seen. We'd love to have that in the chat and make sure to use that throughout the session because again, we are live and we'll be looking at your questions and anything that you put in there. Someone I wanted to bring up real quick before we move on, someone commented that they really love your shirt. I didn't know if you want to quickly explain for everyone else that might not know like what the meaning of your shirt is real quick.
Yeah, sure. Abel Wang was someone that I didn't get the chance to meet, but he was a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and sadly he passed away a couple of months ago. But everyone who knew Abel and got to experience his energy knew what an incredible person he was, and he was a very positive person. And one of the things that he said was, "Do not accept your defaults," right? He was someone who was he never looked down upon anything that was bringing him down. Like he was quite sick, but he was still very positive, and that's a very cool message to have, especially with this year that we're all having. there's a lot of hardships, and we should always try and look on the bright side. And I'm glad to be wearing the shirt and to represent Abel and what he stood for.
Yes, Abel was an amazing human being, always positive. I'd had the honor of meeting him once too. So yeah, it's definitely a great shirt and a great,
Right.
honor to Abel. All right. Well, with that, what do you think, Kamala? Should we get started on the
Yeah,
content
no,
here?
let's dive right into our first unit, using themes to quickly change the appearance of your app.
Yes, so themes are by far one of the easiest way to quickly change the look and feel of our Power Apps Canvas apps. So you're going to hear me say this a lot probably today. With Power Apps, I always describe it as if PowerPoint in Microsoft Excel had a baby, that would be Power Apps Canvas apps. Because as far as building out the UI, like we're going to be focusing on today, it's actually really PowerPoint-esque. It follows some of the same Office concepts where we have an insert tab and we can add in different controls and shapes. And just like in PowerPoint with our slides where we have themes we can apply, we have the same thing that we can apply to our Power Apps Canvas apps. We have a few out-of-the-box themes where we can do everything from light themes that follow maybe the Office look and feel to even dark mode themes. And it's really as simple as finding a theme that you want, clicking the theme, and that will automatically apply that color scheme and that theme to every
Right.
single control in your Power Apps Canvas app. So very quick and easy way to get started there. And this is something best described in a demo. So I think why don't we go first to our first demo here and talk about how we can use some of these out-of-the-box themes and how we can apply one. You want to show us how this works, Emilimo?
Yeah, of course. So I am here in the main Power Apps portal, and you can reach this by going to make.powerapps.com. So we'll be creating a Canvas app from blank. We'll just call this a test app. And we can either choose the tablet or phone formats. We'll speak about what those formats mean a little later on, and just click on create. And after a little while, you should be greeted with this screen right here, just a clear, empty Canvas app. Right. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding a new screen. You're just going to be in that home tab there. We'll click on new screen, and I'll just choose the list. This is a very common format within Power Apps that just has a gallery and a title bar here. And then we'll click on theme, which you'll find here in the top right corner, top left corner, sorry. And as April said, there are various light and dark themes, and it's just as simple as clicking on each of those themes, and that will change the look and feel of your app. It's really, really easy. That is all you need to do. But then let's say we'd like to add one of another control onto our app. Let's say we'd like to add a button. And as you can see, the specific button adopts the colors of the theme that you've chosen. And even after the fact, even after you've added that elements on the screen, if you go back to home and you change the theme again, then everything on the app will turn into the colors of that theme. So this is a really easy and effective way to quickly change the look and feel of your app.
That's very cool that it not only works after you've already put a bunch of stuff on your individual screens, but also before you start applying it. So really cool that it can go both ways. And one of the things I wanted to point out too, this is about building the UI for Power Apps Canvas apps. And the reason that we call it a Canvas app is exactly what Homelema just showed. He created a new application, and what he got was literally a blank canvas where he could build out pixel by pixel, control by control, the complete application that he wants. So that's where we get the name Canvas app from. And that's an easy way to get started with the themes. Now, I want to bring up throughout this, we have some questions, Homelemo, in the chat that I figured we'll just go ahead and bring up now, since a lot of people seem to be asking about this, and we can talk through it. They're wondering about how can we have custom themes, because what you just showed is really cool, but we're a little bit limited on the amount of themes that we have. So to point this out, we're not going to show this today, but there is the ability through the Power Apps, Power Platform Center of Excellence. There's a component in there called a custom theme creator. Or you can actually walk through, and it's like a Power Apps Canvas app that allows you to generate your own custom theme that you can go in and then open that up and apply that in your app. But so that's one way to do it for a custom theme, and it's out there available for free. So keep that in mind. But there's other things that we can do as well, where we can override the look and feel of these individual controls if those themes don't match the colors. So we can, maybe that's a good segue into our next segment here, where we can talk about how we can brand a control.
Exactly.
What do you think?
Yeah. Sure.
Cool. So brand control. So this is a good fit for if, those themes that we talked about that CONLL111 just showed us, if they don't really fit exactly what we're wanting to do. Maybe you want to tweak that button that you saw him add there just a little bit more, and maybe change the text, the font, or to a really custom color based off of maybe what we have in our company brand standard. That's oftentimes when we're building mobile applications and Power Apps for that matter. We have some kind of marketing document, right, that has the company logo, the company font, and the company colors that we're trying to match, right? So we want it to be pretty custom. So that's where we can have these particular properties that we can define for each of those controls that we add in to be able to really override the look and feel. And there's a few properties that we're going to go over and talk through today. Some of them include being able to customize the border. So that button that you saw CONLL111 add had kind of a thick border around it. You can also customize the color of the text, say in that button or any control, or the fill of that. So those are all properties that we're able to customize within our apps. We also have something called disabled properties. Do you want to talk us through what that means, CONLL111?
Yeah, sure. Disabled properties are properties that are, of course, they are only in effect when a control is disabled. Now, there are a few scenarios or use cases as to why you'd want to have disabled properties. One such use case would be in a form, you would disable your submit button and only enable it once all fields in the form have been written out. That's just one use case that we can think of here. And some of the properties that we have on screen now are disabled color and disabled fill, right? For example, if you have other buttons on your form which are enabled, you would like to tell the user or to show the user the difference between those two properties. So you use the disabled color and disabled fill, as well as a whole host of other properties that you can use to show the user that these controls are disabled. Now, to disable a control in your Power App, we have to make sure that the display mode property is set to disabled first, and then we can play around with those properties.
Yep. So really great for when you're talking about, so today we're talking about UI, which is the user interface, which typically we think of like, colors and fonts and all that. But we also have something called UX, or the user experience. And that's more about the functionality of the applications we build. So disabled properties, where that can be a UI concept, is also a user experience concept, because as CONLL111 just pointed out, you might not want to allow someone to click a button unless they filled in all the required information, so that it avoids confusion and really helps from user experience. So a great property that we can configure there. Some of the other ones that we want to touch on and that we'll show here briefly is hover properties. So that's also important to you from a UI standpoint, when you want to be able to visually indicate to your users that they're actually over a particular object or hovering over that. We see that a lot in like navigations on websites. When you hover over the navigation is really common. So some of the things that properties we can configure there within our Power Apps are hover control, or hover color, sorry, and hover fill. So the fill of that object and the color of the text within that object. So all of those that we have to configure. Lots of properties we just talked about. Why don't we also walk through a demo here where we can show how to configure these individual and customize these properties, and maybe walk through an example of that disabled property and how we would use that in the hover property and those border fills and colors. Would you like to walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So right here we have a demo app that we have made, a very incomplete app that we can just show you how to use some of those properties. So I think for the first part, I think I'm going to add in a text input. And as you can see that this is the very like typical, inputs that getcha. It's very square. It doesn't really gel with the look and feel of the app, and we can use some of those properties to fix that. So what we'll do here is that we'll just click on that control, and on the right hand side of the screen we have the properties pane. So let's look at something like the border color. For example, we can see a dark blue or maybe black border, and we just look for the border property here, and there's quite a number of things that we can change. For example, the look and feel of that border, we can make that dashed, and if you can see, there's a slight dash around that text input there. We can also change the color if we would want to anything that we'd like. You can add custom colors as well. So there's quite a number of things that we can do to change the look and feel of that border. But I think for now, what we'll do is we'll just remove that border totally. So you can either do that, or even if we have a certain style, we can set that thickness to 0. So we don't see that border at all. So another thing that we might want to think about is maybe the color of the text. So that's also a property that we have here under color. We can change that to whatever we want, to any color that we want, purple, orange. Maybe we can set that to black. Um, but maybe there are other properties we can play with, right? So for example, that default text, it's a bit ugly. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't tell the user what this is used for. So we can completely take out that text. But we also want to tell the user what that control is used for, right? So we can use something called hint text, that just, if we just write the word search, sorry about that. If we write the word search, then we'll see that there's a bit of a grayed out text that tells the user exactly what that control is used for. And if we were to play this app and we start to type, all the hint text will disappear. So that's a really cool function to know about. Maybe also if you want to maybe have a more rounded effect around this, what we can do is we can look for a property called border radius, and maybe we can change that to, let's try a 90 and see how that looks. And you can see that has a more modern look and feel, and it fits with the general look of the app.
Yeah, it's looking much better already. Those are probably two of my favorite UI tips that you just showed there. One, the hint text. I mean, right there by
Right.
using the hint text, you just avoided having to have like a separate label control to tell the user what that is. You could just use that one property. Pretty cool. And then the border radius, that just really makes things look so much more modern, right? I think that thick blue border and then the squareness just looks like a little bit dated, and you can tell that it's a power app at that point. So like to your point, like your shirt, right? Don't accept the defaults. I mean, that applies to our power apps as well. We change the default properties, that blue color, maybe change the border and the default text as we're building, and think about that when we're building our UI.
True. Right. So now that we have that out the way, let's look at some of the disabled properties. So let's actually make this a bit smaller here, and maybe we can add in a button. And again, we have this default square looking button that isn't all that great looking. The first thing that we can do is, of course, we can change the border radius to fit the rest of the elements there in the app. Let's actually change the background color of this button. Let's make that purple, right? So now we have a purple button there, but you can see that this button is clickable. It is enabled, right? But it doesn't really do much right now, and that is fine. Since we are focusing on the UI elements, let's look at that. So we have white text and we have a purple background, right? That's when the button is enabled, so when users can actually use it. So let's look for the display mode property and change that out to disabled. Now there's a weird gray look to it, which, yeah, I think it tells a pretty good message that this button is unclickable. But let's actually use some of those properties that we learned earlier to make this look more nice, right? So let's click on this button. And while the properties pane is a really good place to interact with some of those properties, you can also come into this bar here on the top left. And what we can do is we can look for the disabled fill property. And right now we can see we even have a preview in our PowerFX bar that the fill property is gray, the disabled fill. So when the button is disabled, the fill property or the background property is gray. So what we can do is we can remove that, and we can use this really cool keyword called self. And self is a way to access the properties of that specific control, which is really cool. So I can access a bunch of the other properties that I have that this control has. So maybe I want to say I want to incorporate the fill color there, right? And then for disabled color, again, I can remove that and say I want to get the color, right? So, but you're probably asking, like, this looks exactly the same as a enabled button. So we can actually add something to the disabled fill. And let's actually, at the beginning of this, we'll add color fade, right? And color fade is a property that just fades colors out. So it makes your color either lighter or darker, depending on the percentage that you give it. So as you can see, it gives you a clue. So color fade accepts two parameters. One is the color. So that first one is filled out by self.fill. So we're getting the fill color, which is purple. And then the next parameter it's asking for is the fade. So this is in a percentage. So we'll just put 30% there. So what I'm saying is, yeah, is that the color should be 30% of the original purple. So 30% lighter, right? Obviously, the higher I go with this percentage, the more lighter it becomes. Then the less I go, then the more darker it is. So I think 30 is a good percentage to have. Now we can see the main difference between a disabled button and a enabled button. So that's a really cool way to use PowerFX within Power Apps to really change some of those properties. Maybe April, you want to touch on what PowerFX is?
Yeah, so PowerFX, what we just mentioned there, that's the programming language that we have for our Power Apps, Canvas apps, and eventually throughout the whole Power Platform. It is based off of Microsoft Excel. So why I said earlier that Power Apps is like a PowerPoint and Excel had a baby is because the UI is like PowerPoint, but the formula logic layer is like Excel because PowerFX is based very tightly on the Microsoft Excel formula language. So that self formula that he just showed there is a relatively new function. I think probably within the last year, maybe year and a half that it was added. It's really cool, like being able to get the context of the control that we're in itself and being able to get all the properties and use that. So yeah, that's what PowerFX is. We just an announcement at Ignite that we had was that it's open source. So yeah, lots of new features coming to PowerFX.
Sure. And the other day we were just speaking about what you can do with drop downs. Maybe you want to walk me through some of that?
Yeah, so we talked about, the properties we can configure. We talked about, borders. And another thing, though, for dropdowns, if we want to add a dropdown, I want to show, some of
Sure.
the defaults that we have to configure with that.
Sure. So I'll go to insert,
Yep.
inputs, and we'll bring a drop down.
Yeah, so
Um,
first thing we notice, there's that typical blue color, right, that we have there. So we
yeah,
have that an icon, but it's like shaded in blue. So that might be, that, and then the border. We have that same blue border that we saw in the input that you added earlier. So we
right.
might want to change the border, and then that drop down though, that's what's really getting me. So that's something called a chevron. So
Uh-huh.
there's a special property that we have in our drop down controls called chevron, hover fill, and all that we can
Mm-hmm.
configure. So yeah, where you're going in the properties drop down on the left hand side, we should see all of these properties called chevron. We have background, we have disabled background, fill, and hover fill, and all that. So each,
Yeah.
because you mentioned, like the disabled for the button, right? We have the same thing for the drop downs as well. So we would have different color settings we have to configure for that, and also when we hover over the chevron. So maybe just off the bat, we want to get rid of that blue, right? So we might go
Yeah.
look at the background, right? The chevron background, and we'll see what
Uh-huh.
color's in there now. And I love the tip you showed, right? When you click on that, it shows us the color. So we know that's that blue
Preview.
color. And then, yeah,
Yes.
maybe we could change that to, white, maybe white, so it blends in with our control.
Right. Let's do a white.
Problem is, though, our icon has kind of disappeared, right? So we probably need
Uh-huh.
to change that color. I think that's that chevron fill property.
Chevron fill. We
Um,
can see that that is
yep.
white.
Yeah, so maybe that purple color would be cool right there.
Sure. So let's do that.
Awesome.
Much
Yeah,
better.
that much better already. Yeah. Yeah,
Now
so what
the
does that look like?
issue comes in. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, let's see what it looks like when we try to use it here.
Yeah. And I think the issue comes in that while it looks good on its own, when we actually try to use it, that hover property comes into effect and it just goes back to its original color. So maybe we need to find a way to make it so that even though we're hovering over it, it stays that original color that we had there.
Sounds to me like a great use case for that self property you just showed us.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's look at some of the hover properties. So while this was chevron fill for that chevron icon, let's go for chevron hover fill. I think that's what happens when you hover over it. And then we can see that it's that original white, but maybe we can add self.chevron fill. I think is the color is the property that we're looking for. And as we can see, that is a purple. So if you run this app, we will see that it remains purple.
Nice.
However, that background is still an issue.
That blue is so difficult to get rid of, right? It's everywhere.
Right. So I think for that, we go to chevron hover. Let's see, chevron hover
Hover
background.
background. Yep.
I think that's a good, and we can see that the color is that blue that we don't want. So let's actually go to self dot chevron chevron background. That sounds about
Yep.
right. That white. So let's play that and see that is
Nice.
exactly what we wanted. And of course, there's still some other issues with the rest of the drop down, but I think the idea is put across that even you can even change hover properties based on the original colors of the control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that there's just, there's so many of these properties we can configure. So that blue
Yeah.
shading that we were seeing in the drop down itself, right? There's hover properties for the drop down in the
Right.
properties pane that we can just, is exactly what we showed you with the chevron, right? We can configure those hover properties and get rid of the blue colors there. And they're using the fade stuff, technique that we saw for those. So it's just as simple as going in each of those properties with the fill and overriding that with those controls. So yeah.
Cool. So, and then I think it's important to note that while we have control over most of the branding in our apps, some controls can only be altered by the theme. Do you know any of these controls that acts that way?
Yeah, this is really good to point out. So most of the controls are going to let you customize it like we just saw. However, there's one particular one that comes to mind that is really kind of reliant on the theming mechanism, and that's the date picker control. So, in the insert tab under input, we have a date picker component control that we can use. And unfortunately, that one is really tightly bound to the theme itself. So we don't have all of the properties that we saw in like the drop-down control and the input control for
Right.
the date picker like we do and all the other ones. So the colors that you're seeing here, like this background color, for the date, and then the color for the selected date. Those are only going to come from your theme. So we're not going to be able to override those. So keep that in mind when you're using date picker. There are ways around this. A lot of us in the community will make our own date pickers for something like this that we have complete control over the colors for. Maybe using something like gallery user, whatever technique that you use for the date picker, where you can get around that, or you can use custom theming stuff that we talked about earlier too. But just keep that in mind that for certain controls like the date picker, you're not going to have as much customability there. All right, so what do you say? So far we talked about, okay, how can we use themes? How can we customize some of the out-of-the-box
Right.
controls? But how do we add more flair, as you could say, at our apps? Icons is a great way to do that, right? So I saw,
Exactly.
so we had an icon in that drop-down for our drop-down control. It was a little arrow, right? So we have lots of out-of-the-box icons that we can actually use for our Power Apps Canvas app right out of the gate. So these are really great for if we want to do things from like adding shapes, or if we want to do things like moving between our applications, right? So if we want to have a back and forth so we can navigate between screens type option, icons are really great for that. Lots of ones we can use out of the box, like I said. So why don't we just jump back over the demo and see what out of the box icons we get, how we can add those, and then how we can change those to add some more functionality to our apps. Would you like to walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So back to our app here, let's just run this. And if we click on any one of these cities, right, this will open up a second page. But then as you can see, there is no way to go back to the previous page. And this is a very useful use case, especially when you're trying to utilize something like icons. So how we add those in is if we just click on this icons tab here, and there's so many different icons that we can choose from. For example, maybe let's click on this left one here, and let's add that, yeah, just to the corner of our app here. And then again, so many different properties to choose from there. And a nice change that I like to make to the icons is that this seems a little too big. So what I usually do is if I can just change the padding um, of the icon, it makes the icon a little bit smaller while still maintaining that button press. So if I'm using this on a mobile, even though the icon itself is quite small, there's still a bit of surface area for users to press that button. Padding is really the the um, the space around the icon within that specific control. So that's a really cool tip that I usually use. And then of course we can change the color to fit the rest of the app. So that is pretty cool. And then of course we need to change the on select property. So in Power Apps, the on select property is used to say when I click on the specific item or when I select, what should it do, right? And in this case, we would like the app to go back to our previous screen. So we can just type in back, and then this will ensure that it goes back to whatever screen I came from. So if I were to run this app as is and go into the different cities, then we have that icon there for us to go back on. So that is pretty cool. But then let's just say you don't really like the look and feel of this icon here. there is a new feature that was added very recently in our properties pane here on the right. If you go to icon and click here, there's a search feature. So you can search for whatever icon you want. So maybe we want back. We can just click on back to change that. Or we can use something like arrow, right, to go back, right? So no matter what icons you have, you're not restricted, and you can change that while maintaining some of the original properties that you've set for that icon. So that is cool, and that's actually one of my favorite features.
Yeah, mine too. I was so happy when they added that in, so we could easily change those icons out for sure.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think with that, maybe we want to learn a bit about images and how to use those within our Power Apps.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, I figured, we're live, so we might as well take advantage of some of the things we have in the chat, as we're going along here.
Sure.
Yeah, so why don't some of these are kind of relevant to what we're talking about now. So Christine is asking if it's possible to apply different themes on a single application, so maybe different themes per screen. That's a great question. So the way that it works right now is the theme you apply is to the entire application. Now, some of the concepts, though, that we've been showing you, right, where we can go into the individual controls and change the colors. So you could, say, apply one of those themes that we showed you, but you can always override individual controls in a screen and override the theme that you set on some of those controls, except for the date picker, like we mentioned, which is bound to the theme you choose. So, I mean, I guess the answer is it's kind of possible. You can't have truly multiple themes per screen, but you can apply a theme and override the properties like we've shown.
Right.
Yeah. And then let's see, one more here that I figured we might touch on. So can all the properties you've been showing be applied as part of a theme, or must we change the border color, radius, etc., to be configured on each control? So that, yeah, the thing we showed at the very beginning, those out of the box themes, if you don't want to have to do what we were just showing, right, where we're going into the border color and the icon color and the drop down and all that, if you don't want to do that, everyone, then you want to use one of those themes because that applies the colors to all the controls for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
Perfect.
Great. So we answered some of those. We'll come back. We'll check in after this next section on some more of your questions. They're great questions so far. Thanks for adding those in the chat. Yeah. So as Homelama said, let's move on and let's talk about images. So that's another, the icons are great. We can add some functionality into our applications there and make them look a little bit styled with icons. But as you saw, we only have so many icons that we can add. So we might want to interject some of our own custom images. So we can do that easily with an image control that we have inside Power Apps. And with the image control, we can do things like changing the actual image that shows. And we have different settings we can configure as well, as far as the position of the image, the transparency, and maybe like how it shows up, if it's, fill, stretch, and all those different properties that we can configure. And these can be added directly into our Power Apps in local storage. We can have up to 200 megabytes worth of images stored locally. Or we can pull those images from, say, a data source, maybe like a OneDrive or a SharePoint or Azure Blob Storage, wherever you might be wanting to pull images for, right? So why don't we walk you through how some of these images can work, how we actually go add an image into Power Apps, and how we can customize some of those properties that we have.
Sure. Yeah, of course. So back in our demo app here, let me just zoom in a bit. So what we do is we go to insert and we go to media and we just add the image control there. And then a really easy way. So right now, the source of this image that we are seeing here is called sample image. Whenever you add an image into your app, it'll always draw from sample image. And then if you go to the right side here in the properties pane under image, you can just click this drop down and you can have you can choose one of the images that you have in your Power App. So let me just choose this sunrise image, which is actually the background of this app. Okay, then April spoke about various image positions that you may have, and that you can find those over here on the right side. and there's quite a number of them. There's center, fill, fit, stretch, and tile. So right now it's set to fit, and what fit does is it tries to fit the image within the size of the control. Um, it will try not to crop any part of the image out. Like it says fit, so it'll whatever size you make your control, it'll try to fit the image in accordingly. Then we have something called center. So center, this really zooms into the image. In this part, it does crop a lot of the image out depending on how big your control is. So this is not really something that you would use often. It also has stretch. So this will stretch the full image without cropping. So according to the size of your control, that could look either good or bad. Like I said, it is stretching the image to fill in all the space, unlike fit, where it crops the image accordingly to fit it in perfectly. And then we have tile, right? So what tile does is, and actually we don't have enough space on this app to show you exactly what tile is, but it will repeat the image across that control that we have there. So I think um, something that most people use is fill, right? That will try and fill the image as much as possible. It will try and crop the image to try and make it as good um, as it can be within that control size. So let's actually work with a few other properties here, like the transparency. So this is very similar to color fade, where it either makes the image lighter or darker than it originally is. For example, so if I put 0.5, that's about half transparent, so you can barely see that image. And the closer it is to 0, the darker it is. And of course, have that, then it's you can barely see that. So you can play around with how transparent you want your image to be. It's totally up to you and for your app, right? So we'll leave that at 0, and then what we'll do is we'll just make the size. Let's go with 70 and 70 to make that equal. So I'm making that just a small square. I'll put that in the corner of the app. And then what I'll do is I will also play with the border radius. Let's just put that at 30, similar to what we did with our button earlier on. So I'll make that a bit rounded so it has the same look and feel as the other images on your app. When working with images and power apps, or with any element really, try and make your screens as uniform as possible. So I'm putting it in this position for something we'd like to show later on.
That's great. So much to unpack there for what you just showed with images. So first of all, I mean, I wanted to touch on when might you use custom images like this and why. So for one, what CONLL111 was showing here on the app that he already built, you see he's using that image for a nice background. So that's something that creates an appealing UI rather than having just a static white background that you might see, right? Just something a little bit visually appealing, makes it look really nice. But another big one, not to forget, is if you want your own custom icons. So again, we only have the limited out of the box ones that we have, but there's so many other icons that we have available to us and free resources out there. So we can, there's nothing stopping us from using the image control for those icons as well. And I really love that transparency option that you showed, because a quick tip, what I use that for a lot is whether it's a background, like an image like that, or maybe it's even just like a rectangle icon shape. If I want to do some kind of pop-up screen in my Power App to maybe show some quick information, or maybe like, are you sure you want to delete this, right? Oftentimes when you see those dialog boxes on websites, you'll notice that they have a transparent effect. You can kind of see what's behind the screen there, but you know that there's this kind of transparent box up above that. So that's a great use of that transparency feature on your images or your icons there as well. So lots of great use cases for this. Did you want to? Yeah, I was gonna say, did
That's
you want to share real quick, like where you went and added in the images in the app, just so everyone can see where they would go and add that if they want to save it locally in Power Apps?
Sure. Yeah. So in the on the left side of your screen here, there are these various icons. You'd like to go to this media icon here and click on that, and that is one way to upload images from your local drive. Just click on upload, choose an image there, and then that will upload into the into your Power App. Then once that is up, then you are able to choose that from your selected drop down. Another way is if you have images in some sort of data source, either in a SharePoint list or Azure Blob Storage or wherever your data is, you can incorporate that into a gallery list like this, a data table, wherever you want. So it really depends on the specific use case that you're focusing on and how you want to show your images.
Yep, absolutely. And if you, one more thing I'll mention on the images before we move on is if you are using, say, maybe really high resolution images that you want to upload in there, make sure that you're running them through some kind of maybe compressor tool to get those as small a size as possible while still
Yeah,
maintaining the quality, so that your app isn't having any performance issues. So just one thing to keep in mind. Okay, we did a lot of talking. What do you think, Kamlama? Should we do our first knowledge check?
I think it's time.
All right, cool. So this one should be pretty timely here based off what we just talked about. So again, we're live in the chat. So if you'll use the chat to put in your answers here, and we'll see how everyone does. So first question, when using an image control, which of the following image positions does not belong? Keyword does not belong here. So let's see what we have. We have A, stretch, maybe, B, fit, C, tile, or D, expand.
Expand.
Hmm. Now
Yeah.
this, yeah, this seems a little bit tricky to me. I don't know about you.
Bit of a trick question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stretch and expand seem very similar. Um,
Yep. I could see it definitely being one of those.
yeah.
But which one? I guess you had to been really paying attention in your demo there when you click that drop down on the image there. I remember
There
you.
is quite a few.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning
Sure.
the tile effect because that could be cool if you wanted to have tiles there. And I think the fits. I know
Right.
one of them maintained the aspect ratio, and the other one tried to crop it down and didn't scale it. So yeah,
Exactly.
could be either one of those. Let's see how we're doing there in the poll, and we'll give it a few more seconds. Yeah, this is a little bit tricky one, so don't feel bad if you didn't catch that in there, since it is. All right, let's see. And the answer is D,
Expand.
expand. Yes.
Yeah.
So yep, it looks like most of you did get it right there. Yeah, so it was the stretch versus expand. So that is not one. The option was stretch, right? So that's the one that will try to stretch it out as much as possible, not preserving the aspect ratio.
Yeah. Usually something that we probably won't use. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, so moving along. We talked about a lot of concepts here. Now, what if we want to take our app the extra step further and add some personalization into it? And what I mean by personalization is how can we get some information about the person that's currently logged into the app and display some information to make them feel welcome into our application? And to do that, we have a nifty out-of-the-box PowerFX function called the user function. And the user function allows us to get three main properties about the user. We can get their email, their full name, so their first and their last name, and their profile image. So all that information we're able to easily get with that user function and surface up in our application. So Homaloma just showed us how we can use images. Wouldn't it be cool if we could use that same image control, maybe along with this user function, to pull in their profile image and show that in our application and maybe their name? That would be great. So let's take a look at how we can do this in our next demo. We'll see how we can use a user function to get the current logged in user's profile picture and how to get their name.
Yep. Okay, cool. Let's get that going. Back in our demo here, I'm going to zoom in a bit. just so we can see that. So as we did in the previous parts, we added this image control here. So what we can do is let's click on the on this pane here. Let's look for image. We can remove this and we can use the word user, right, with parentheses, and then we use like a dot, right? We period or full stop, depending on where it is you are from, and this like dot, this is this acts as a function that accesses properties, right? So as we can see, as soon as we put that dot there, we have we have image, email, and full name. So we are extracting these various properties from the user function. So in this case, we would like to get the specific image, right? And that user function, it represents the user that's currently logged in, right? So since I am logged into this app here, then it will grab my image. And as you can see here, if we look at this image as well as the image in the upper right corner here, they are the same image. So if multiple people within my org are using this app, as they log in, it'll be their image displayed on the app here. So that is pretty cool. The next thing, let's look at this greeting property. All right, hello is all good. It's clean. It is neat. But wouldn't it be nice to make it more personal for that specific user, right? The remaining properties we could use is either we can use their email, right, which works, but it's not really, it's not really something that we do in an app. Let's rather get their full name, which I think is something that makes a lot of sense. But then we can just take this a step further by using a bit of PowerFX there. Let's add some text. We'll say hello, and then we'll add that's to join these two functions together, right? We have the greeting there, and then we're joining it with the user's full name. So that adds a really nice effect to your app. So whoever is logged in at that time, they'll have their image, and the app will greet them by their name. And as you can see how powerful, excuse the pun, some of these uh, functions are, especially how they add to the general look and feel of the app.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, adding in personalization again, it's a UI and a user experience thing. It just makes our users feel more welcome. And it couldn't get more simple than that with that user function.
Right.
Obviously, we can use the PowerFX stuff that we've been talking about if we only wanted to get maybe just their first name instead of their last name. We can use particular functions in there to extract just the first name from the username. And then if we wanted to get information about, people other than the logged in users, maybe we wanted to show information
Right.
about their manager, we can use our connector model. We have a connector called the Office 365 Users Connector that allows us to get even more information about a user. So this is the easiest way as far as getting images and just their name. But if you need to do even more, maybe get some more detailed information, we can use the Office 365 Users Connector for that.
Right. Exactly.
Great.
Maybe this is time for another knowledge check.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a great time for it. So everyone did great on our last one. So let's see how we do on this next one here. Again, pretty timely. So which formula returns the full name of the current Power Apps user? This is another tricky one. So I'm gonna talk through all these options. I'm gonna give you the options and then we'll talk through it a bit. So is it A, user dot full name, or B, full name dot user, open and close parenthesis? Or we have C, user open close parenthesis dot full name, or D, user open close parenthesis dot name. So this one is even more tricky than the last, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
so we are getting the full name, not just the name. So that's something to keep in mind there. And also the order of the total function, right? So are we getting the user from the full name, or are we getting the full name from the user? And just to touch on what I spoke about earlier on, that dot, right? That
Yeah.
dot is used to access properties of a specific function. So those are just a few things to bear in mind when thinking about this question.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely keep in mind the context of what we're getting and what that dot means and how it's allowing us to get additional information about an object. So that'll help you with this one. And then also, those parentheses, what do those mean and when do they come in?
Right.
So, all right. I think most everyone's answered this one. So this moment of truth, let's see what the answer is here. And it is C, user, open close parenthesis, dot, full name.
Right.
So, yeah, exactly as what HomeAlone was saying. You got to keep in mind of what that dot is there. And the parentheses kind of let us know that that's an object or a function that we're using there. So, all right. And it looks like most everyone got that one right there too. So great job.
Perfect. Great.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right, so if you remember from what we're going to learn today, we're going to talk about images, icons, properties, personalization. Well, the last thing that we have to talk about is tablets in phone form factors. So what exactly do we mean by this? Well, we might have noticed that when we very first started out here in HomeAlone was showing us the theming, he created a new Power App. And when he did, there were two options that showed up there. He had to choose whether he wanted to have a phone or a tablet form factor. So these are kind of something that you got to set from right off the bat, kind of just showing how your application is going to be optimized. So the phone form factor is going to be what you're seeing here on the left, where it's going to be optimized. It's going to be very narrow in width, but it's going to be tall, optimized obviously for a mobile device. Again, now, Tom, do you want to talk about, I guess, the tablet form factor real quick?
Yeah, sure. With this one, you'll notice that you have a much larger space to work with, and because you have a bigger screen size, you can add more properties and do more with what you have according to whatever use case you are building for. The tablet form factor would be much more optimized for people using the app on either a tablet or a PC. So, and then the other thing to take note is that even though you are choosing which form factor to choose for a specific use case, the functions which are available to you within Power Apps are the same. So no matter if you choose phone or you choose tablet, it doesn't really matter. You still have access to the full set of Power App functions.
Yeah, exactly. Great thing to point out. And another thing that I want to point out as well is no matter which one of these you choose, that application will work across all the devices. It'll work on tablet, your PC, and your phone. If you chose, say, the tablet form factor, then you would just simply you want to use it on your mobile device. Instead of having and using the app like this, you would just turn it over and use it that way, and it would work fine. Same thing with the phone form factor. You can pull it up on your desktop or your tablet, and it would work. It would just have some borders on the left and right of the app. So, and then we also have something called responsive design. So that's another thing that we can do. This came up a lot in the chat, so I did want to make sure to highlight it. This is a good point to bring it up. What do we do if we want to maybe have different screens, say, be optimized for mobile, or maybe one for a little bit wider for a tablet, or what if we want to really have complete control? Well, we do have responsive templates that we can use, screen templates. You might notice HomeAlone used that when he first started the application for the theme. He used one of the screen templates that showed a list. We also have responsive screen templates, which we could just show you briefly just where they are here in a little bit. But when we're talking about responsive, you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping in mind these two settings here, which is aspect ratio and lock orientation. So those are really going to be important if you do want to do some of this responsive design like I'm talking about. Responsive meaning that the app responds accordingly when you scale down your application on different devices. Because you want to make sure that you look at the aspect ratio, because there's a setting that if you lock it, it's going to try try to retain the appropriate aspect ratio on the phone, and then the orientation as well, which we can walk you through in our last demo here of the different form factors, where we can show you how to choose the form factor, and then we can do a level overview of some of these settings. If you want to walk us through that, Homalema.
Yeah, sure. So like right here we have the phone, and then in our earlier demo we have this tablet form factor. But even if we chose that at the start, it doesn't mean you can't change that. So we can go to file here at the top, we go to settings, and then we go to display. So as you can see, you can change that at any part of your developing of your Power App, as well as the various sizes. So this is very specific to the tablet form factor, where you can change it to suitable sizes for whatever the device you are developing for, as well as a custom option, right? If you want a certain width and height for your app, you can do that here. And then the two aspects that April just touched on are the aspect ratio as well as the orientation. For the aspect ratio, right now it is on, meaning that it is locked. So meaning that if I were to deploy this app to a wide variety of devices, it'll try to maintain that aspect ratio. It'll try to keep it as I originally had it. If I turn that off, then it'll try to spread and try to occupy the space of whatever device that app is currently running on. With the orientation, as April said, right now it is off. So probably if I were to deploy the specific app and turn my phone in various ways, the app will change and shift to fit whatever way my phone is. But if I lock that, then I will be able to make sure that even if the phone is turned in the orientation that I didn't set it to, it would remain in that in that specific um, way that I developed the app. So these are just some things that you need to think about when developing your app, especially if your org is very big and people will be using the app on a wide variety of screen sizes. So this just a few things for you to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, it's so awesome how this is really configurable. If you were doing this the custom dev route, I mean, it's pretty time consuming to have to accommodate your app to be able to use on, iOS, Android, tablets, different random tablets and desktops and all that, and different browsers. So it's cool that this is fairly configurable out of the box and pretty seamless to use across all of those different devices with these settings.
Right.
Great. All right. Well, what do you think? I think maybe this would be a good time to go to our last knowledge check, and then we can maybe circle back to some of this if we have some Q&A time at the end.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So last knowledge check here. When creating an app, what two form factors can you choose from? So we have A, tablet and PC. It's interesting. We have B, tablet and phone. C, phone and PC, or D, tablet and iPhone. So
Right.
yeah, I'm thinking it's definitely not D. Like there's no specification in here on the type of phone for sure, right? Because that's the cool thing about Power Apps, like we just mentioned, it works on iPhone or Android devices seamlessly. So there's no limit there. So I'm thinking probably a no on that one.
Yeah, and to rule that out even further, A, tablet and PC are very similar screen sizes, so that's also something I don't think would be an option for you when creating your Power App.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. But the other two, I could see either one. I know phone's definitely one of them, but we just have to determine if it's tablet or PC there on one of those.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's Let's see, what do you say? Moment of truth for our last knowledge check of the day here. Let's see what the answer is on this. And it is tablets and phone. Yep.
Yeah, so it's very important to note that even if PC isn't an option, when you choose the tablet form factor, you are likely developing for people who will be using the app on PC as well.
Yes, absolutely. So that tablet option, it's for if you want to optimize it for tablet or for PC. So not an actual PC option, but tablet's the one. So good to keep in mind. And great job, everyone, on that knowledge check. Look like most of you all got that right as well. All right. Well, we have covered a lot today. Why don't you say we kind of summarize what we've learned so far?
Sure.
All right. So we talked about the basics of understanding the UI through themes. We talked about that early on. Icons, customizing our individual control properties, and images. HomeAlone gave us a great overview of personalization, how we can pull in your profile image and your full name to personalize our applications. And we just went over understanding the differences between the tablet and mobile form factors for our apps. As a reminder too, don't forget after this you can learn everything and follow along in the exercises on the Learn module for everything that we walked through today. So it has great interactive exercises that you can practice and apply the new skills based off of what we talked about today. And a few other resources, and then we're gonna save time for Q&A. We're gonna have time for a few more questions. We have a great Power Platform course on Udacity that really walks you through, the basics of building a Power App. So if you are new to Power Apps and want to learn even more about it, that's a great free course to go through. From a UI perspective, I do have a quick link there to a YouTube playlist I have of some of the UI tips and tricks for Power Apps, Canvas apps that I've produced over the years. So there's lots on theming. I know that question came up quite a bit. I talk through there about how you can use a theme generator and how you can use some approaches to branding to apply some custom themes. So might be something you want to check out as well to get some more UI tips.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and please
yeah.
never stop your learning. This is just one of many Learn Live sessions, both at the conference and outside of the conference. You can follow any one of those QR codes there that will take you to a whole host of Learn Live sessions covering not just the Power Platform, covering all sorts of interesting topics and Microsoft products. So please, after this session and after the conference as a whole, please do not stop learning.
Yes, so many great resources out there. Lots of a collection of learn. We also have the Cloud Skills Challenge, so don't forget to take part in that. Sign up. All you have to do is complete at least one of the challenges, and you can earn a free Microsoft certification exam. So that's pretty exciting. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and then like I said earlier, Ignite is just the start. There's so many exams that you can take all year round. So just follow the links on screen to learn more about those and see what best suits your specific role and get certified.
Yep, absolutely. I've taken several of the certifications. They're a great way to prove your skills for sure. Okay, so what do you say, HomeAlone? We have some time left. I think we have a ton of questions from the audience.
Oh.
So why don't you say we get to some of those in the remaining time that we have. Cool. All right. So let's take a look here and see what we have. Oh, I like this one. So GNW, can you please tell us something about building and providing a UI component library for companies? This would be an interesting option to show settings for colors, etc. That's a really cool question. I don't know your take on this, HomeAlone, but my mind first went to Power Apps components. We have a component library capability in the components there where we can use the out-of-the-box controls that we have for Power Apps and build our own custom controls. So I think I mentioned early on how that date picker control is kind of limited to being able to be styled by the theme, and that sometimes I create my own. So that's something that I used a Power Apps component for. I created a custom date picker component, which I could apply component properties to style that component. So that'd be a great use case for that. We have great learned documentation on how to build components and Power Apps as well. So definitely might want to check that out.
Right.
Right. Okay. I don't know if you want to take this one, Homo or not. If not, I can. Someone asked, Prashad asked, is there an option to apply transparency to the background in a Canvas app?
Yes, that is sure. That is true. You can do just that, as April mentioned earlier. When importing some of those images into your Canvas app, you can change the background to not have that general white background that usually comes with a Canvas app. And there is a transparency property that you can access either on the right properties pane or in the properties drop down on the left, and you can do whatever you want with that property, especially on your background.
Yes, absolutely. So lots of options we have to configure there. Um, let's see. There's another one in the chat, and this kind of I think goes into the whole responsive stuff I was talking about, but we'll point it out. So it says sometimes that you need an app not for tablet but for desktop or laptop. So what's the best way to adapt font size in an entire app to have more space for more elements in one screen and fonts not so big? Yeah, so in my mind, I think that's a great use case for maybe some of those responsive design concepts. We can do some of this. Let me just briefly show real quick. There's great use cases out there on the community forums. So one of them is a visual guide to Power Apps containers built by Matthew Devaney. So this is available at aka.ms/power platform-samples. And it shows you how you can use some of these responsive containers to dynamically adjust things like the text height and all of that inside of our application. So really cool use case here for responsive design. And we also have those responsive templates. So if I just quickly, and since we have a little bit of time here, open up, say, this application for a visual guide to containers, you see some of these responsive templates that we have, so that, again, we can use this so that maybe one screen might be optimized maybe more for a phone form factor, a little bit more narrow, but another screen, if you need to show like a lot of tabular data, for example, might be optimized a little bit more wide. So if we go on our home tab into new screen up here, you'll see these three options. We have split screen, sidebar, and header, main section, footer. These are those out-of-the-box responsive templates. So if I click on one of those, you see it adds this container in the bottom right-hand side under our tree view. And these are sections that we can put different elements and controls into. And how it works is if you've did any development in the past, so you might be familiar with, Bootstrap, being able to do some development there. So I can maybe add in, say, a button here at the top, and it's going to dynamically respond to the width and the height here. And I can set how it should align to the container, maybe at the top, or I want it to fill and stretch into the entire container. So this kind of makes it a little bit easier to do some of this responsive design. So great out-of-the-box functionality that we have
That's
to
a great
accommodate
tip.
for that.
Yeah.
Yep. And actually, while I'm back there too, I'm just going to show real quick, what are some things that we can do from a design perspective. And I thought I'd walk through just, some of the apps that I built quickly. So just here's an example using some of the same concepts we talked about today. I'm having images up here to create it more visually appealing. You notice I applied a custom theme and styling. I'm using none of the blue color. I have some purple here. And then if I go to book, here's a custom date picker that I was mentioning that I use. So rather than the one that we're limited in the theme for, I created my own that takes up the full width of the screen with custom colors and all of that. So just give you an idea of things you can do from a UI perspective to make your application look good. And I'm using that transparency. We talked about this earlier, right? Where we can have an object, but you can see I can see this, and it kind of is a little bit transparent. So that kind of walks through and just gives you a holistic view of all the things that we applied and how it works. So with that, I think we've addressed all the questions. Any final thoughts before we leave, Homolomo?
Yeah, no. People when they starting out with Power Apps, they usually try and retain that stock, that template that we have. So you should always try and push yourself to try and make your apps look better, to try and play with all the properties and elements that are within Power Apps to make your app look better. If you don't find any of the properties that can help you now, just
Yep.
just maybe look at some videos, go through forums and try and incorporate some of those hacks, and then the features will catch up with us later on.
Great advice. All right. And as you said, keep learning, try some of those learn modules. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Cool. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye bye.